Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our October webinar, and we're talking about Google Analytics. I'm sure that's your favorite topic when it comes to delving in. So hopefully I'm going to just help you navigate GA4 just a little bit and provide a little bit of context, why it's important to look at it. Also help to pull out some of the key stats and which you need to look at, because there's all sorts of stuff within Google Analytics. And to be honest, there's an awful lot which on the day-to-day you don't really need to be looking at. So I'm going to be quite nuts and bolts today, and go into some of the specific specific stats on which you need to have a look at. We're going to flip over to Google Analytics. We're going to have a little look at Google Search Console. We're going to look at, we're going to have a little bit slight shameless plug. We're going to show the dashboard we have created to hopefully make life a little bit easier when looking at that data. And we're going to flip between the two, and hopefully this will be a nice, useful session for you. So those of you who haven't met me before, my name is John Monk. I'm head of performance here at ASP, and I look after search engine optimization, helping people's websites get more visibility within Google and the AI engines, as well as helping our platform get better, plus look at both data, obviously, which we're looking at today, which is a key part of performance, because if you don't know how well you're doing, obviously it's quite difficult to then plan how to do better. And also have a look at conversion rate optimization too, getting more people from your website actually to register or do what you want them to do. So it's been interesting. So I came to events about 4 years ago, and come from a background where I've worked in other industries such as financial services, where looking at data and analysing how things are going, stakes are generally pretty high because it's a very competitive industry. And so therefore looking at and analysing the data was just something in which everyone did, and in a lot of detail. And obviously events is a very, very different industry to financial services. I fully understand that as an event marketer, you're pulled absolutely from pillar to post. There's 101 things in which you need to be doing, not at least the actual event, in which there's a huge amount of activity coming up to it. And certainly it's not helped when it comes to looking at data, in that Google Analytics changed from Universal Analytics a year or so ago, which is a lot more difficult to use. I don't know why they did what they did. It's nowhere near as user-friendly, and it's on a regular basis, almost weekly, I'm speaking to people and they moan about how difficult Google Analytics is, and I fully get that. It took me really quite a while to get into it and to understand what it was saying and how to find the data. But the big problem with this, it therefore means that a lot of the amazing insights in which you can get out of Google Analytics to run your marketing campaigns, to make everything work better, to get really good return on investment, a lot of that really insightful stuff is hidden away. People find it difficult to get to it, and therefore along the way, when you're doing campaigns and you're seeing how things are working, it's difficult to actually make those comparisons, see if one thing is working better than something else. And so as a result, we certainly do speak to many organisers in which it does appear that many of the campaigns are running a little bit blind, don't necessarily know how that could be working versus pay-per-click, maybe versus email. And it's a huge opportunity lost. It potentially will be costing money. Potentially you could be wasting time in doing certain things that aren't working as well as others. So it's really invaluable, to be honest, to try and get those key analytics so you can really see what's working, what's not, if there are any problems, and just taking the guesswork out. I know I'm speaking to the converted here. You probably wouldn't be here if you weren't interested in finding out how to get to this data and looking at those numbers. But just really, I guess, just re-emphasising how important it is that that the data's there and you can have a look at it. So it can certainly feel overwhelming. I fully get that. There's Google Analytics. Not sure if you're also aware, there's also another service called Google Search Console. So Google Analytics is very much for finding what people do when they come onto your website, all of the different marketing channels. You can then start delving into all the different pages and how long people spend on them and all sorts of data around that. So it's very in depth. Google Search Console is a completely separate platform. And what that does also is tell you how people have got to your website from search. So, for example, the queries in which they may have typed in and how they have found your website. And between the two of them, it's extremely insightful because it can let you know the pages people are going to, how long they're spending on them, but also what they typed into Google to find their way to your site. And that's really useful to know and can give lots of insight. And I'll come on to the kind of insight in which you can get, how you can use it, and how you can make your website better and your results better as a result of that. Just going back onto the idea of data and how important it is, I like to use, funny enough, my daughter is just looking at universities at the moment, and I was thinking if she was going to uni and she wasn't actually aware of the grades in which she was going to be getting, and also she wasn't aware of what the actual entrance requirements for of the university in which she's looking to go to, it would make for quite a mismatch. She could obviously be looking at universities in which she's not suitable for, as well as trying for things that maybe she couldn't get into. So in many ways, I think of the kind of lack of data within marketing campaigns as a similar thing, because you may be going after the wrong things, or you may be just not achieving what you should be. There's also the analogy I was also thinking of, let's say you have a well-meaning teacher who is maybe giving her some guidance as to what she thinks she should be doing. And in many ways, that could be like a marketing agency and which may be giving you guidance as to certain things that you could be doing. But unless you know all of your data, it's very difficult to help them to help you, because as a general rule, you will know your business better than the marketing agency. So whilst they might be giving the best advice that they think they can give, unless you know all of your data, how well all of the campaigns are working, and know yourself what you're going towards, it's difficult to give them the guidance and the information they need to actually do their campaigns as well as they could be. So it's possible, if you don't know all of your data, that campaigns that they could be running may not be as effective as they could be and potentially costing more money. So we're going to be covering, I briefly mentioned this, Google Analytics, some essentials there, Google Search Console. I'm also going to just briefly raise some concepts about data accuracy and tags on your website. So I'm just going to introduce that. Very, very briefly mention cookie consent. We've spoken about this before in previous webinars. We're not covering it today, but I'm just going to briefly raise that and talk about a future webinar that we're going to have. And then the concept of the combined dashboard to hopefully make things easier and simpler. So Google Analytics, let's have a look at this first. I've brought up some key metrics here which might be useful, but rather than looking at it here, I thought it'd be useful to firstly go into Google Analytics, remind ourselves what that looks like, where you can get some of these metrics, and then showing contrast to how it could look on a simpler dashboard. So if we go over to Google Analytics, actually, let's go back home. Just for your information, this is dummy data from Google. So it's a bit of a demo account in which they have. So you go over to reports. User acquisition could be quite a good one. So this is where people are coming from. Immediately, as we all know, Google Analytics doesn't necessarily use terminology which is that obvious what it means, but user acquisition is a reasonable report to look at, because as a marketer, this can give you a relatively good summary of where people are coming from. So for example, direct traffic when they type in your web address directly or as a bookmark, organic search, which is obviously on Google or Bing or in one of the AI engines, paid search, referrals could be from other websites, and all the others. So we have various metrics in here from users. So just to briefly explain what some of these mean. So a user is a person, as you'd expect. You'll often see the term sessions used, which can be quite useful. So, for example, a session could be someone who goes into your shop, and that same person could go into that shop 3 times. So that will be one user and 3 sessions as they go into that shop. So, for example, if you had 1,000 sessions and you had 500 users, on average, each user is going into your shop twice. And therefore, you think that's a good thing because people haven't just gone in and gone out and gone somewhere else. They've obviously seen something which has sparked their attention and they decide to go back in again. As you'd imagine, you have new users, which is people who have come for the very first time. And then we have other metrics too, such as events. But one thing I don't really like about this here is that we have some interesting stats. So we can say that 56% of people have come to your website directly, but and we see it's got more events. But how overall is it working compared with your other channels? You know, how's it working compared with organic, social, etc.? One of the key things for me that is missing here is a conversion. So conversion would be when someone actually registers or someone buys a ticket. Other conversions off season may be, for example, someone has signed up to your newsletter. So if you don't have the conversions here, it's very difficult to kind of compare apples with apples, see, and what we're looking for is a conversion rate. So you can then easily compare. So you could see, for example, that organic social had a conversion rate of 5%, whereas organic search maybe was 3%. And then you can, irrespective of kind of how many conversions there had been, we can now compare the two and wonder why one is higher than the other and start delving in deeper. So that's what I see as missing from here. Here's a sneak preview of our dashboard that we have created, which is now within Insights. Now, if we go down, we have, so the whole idea with this is it's all on one page. So we don't have to navigate via the different menu as we did on Google Analytics. So the idea here is that we can navigate on one page, in which we have the channels here as we just went through. We've spoken about sessions here. So here is, we can see that the users had more than one session. But also what we've added into here is what we call key events. So that could be something like the registration, and then we have the conversion rate at the end. So we can now compare one channel versus another channel. So as mentioned, sessions is really useful to know. Those people going into your shop. The number of people actually going in is users, and then users are obviously the first time people come in. And all of those are very useful metrics. And so we've put those onto our dashboard, and there's certainly ones which are worth rooting out, whether you use our dashboard or not when you go into Google Analytics. Engagement rate. So this is the percentage of people who actually spend some time on your site. So that's really useful. Average engagement time. So this gives you an indication of then how long people are spending time on your site as well. So we have average engagement per sessions. That gives an idea of time, which, because fundamentally you want people to spend, if your website's useful, you want people to spend time on there, reading it, you're looking at your speakers, and then obviously clicking any form of conversion button. So actual time people spend on it on site from different channels is really useful. If the engagement time is low, again, you can then easily compare here, and we can start to think, well, maybe we're sending people to the wrong page. Maybe there's a disconnect between the advert in paid search, in paid, and where you're actually sending people to. Or maybe there's something incorrect with the, for example, on the email campaign, maybe there's something again which isn't quite tying up. So when people get onto the page, it doesn't make sense to them, and then they just click the back button. I think the key though for me is, and I've said it once, is conversion rate and getting conversions on there. It's just so important because at the end of the day, All of the other metrics are fantastic, and they're part of that funnel as people go into your site. But ultimately, what we're wanting it to do is to convert, isn't it? It's to get those registrations, get those ticket sales, get sign-ups to newsletters. And unless you actually know that, you can't hand on heart really say how well the website's doing and how effective all of the different campaigns are doing. So conversion rate for me is absolutely key, and it's something that you really should be now thinking about getting onto the website. Just to confuse matters, it's not called conversion rate in Google Analytics. It's actually called a key event, which is doubly confusing, being that we'll work in events, but it's called a key event. So a key event, like I say, is just a key thing such as a purchase. Not to be confused with an event. So an event within Google Analytics is an action that someone takes. So that might be a click on a button, a scroll down to the bottom of the page. Google Analytics now does loads of these things automatically. So the key event is something that you set up and do a little tick if you go into admin and into events within Google Analytics. You can actually mark which are key events. And as a general rule, I'll try and keep those to an absolute minimum. And during the kind of the main marketing season, they would be, for example, like I say, tickets, ticket sales, or sign-ups, that type of thing, depending on part of the show cycle you're in. If you have conversion rates put in, it starts to paint a lot more of a picture. So, for example, here we can see that via our example email campaign here, only sent 100 people to the website, only did 15 conversions. With paid social, so obviously we need to get the conversions here. With paid social, 1,000 visits, only 10 conversions. But the big difference, and that's where conversion rate's so important, is a difference in conversion rate. So we can see that email was disproportionately higher in terms of its effectiveness than paid social. Now that may be, I guess, because it's sent to a very, very warm email list. And that will be factored into the equation when you're thinking about why there might be such a big difference. But also maybe something was actually put on the email. Maybe it was the subject line. Maybe it was the actual content within the email that particularly resonated with your audience. And the thing is, if you can see big differences like this, then it gives opportunity to then actually try that in other campaigns too. So was there something put in this email campaign that you can think, hold on a second, we could possibly use that and repurpose that for a paid social campaign? And it's only really once you have conversion rates set up that really starts to highlight opportunities such as this. On the flip side, let's say you have your marketing channels and all of them are around, I don't know, let's say 5-6%, and then you have another channel down at 1%, and it can also highlight a problem, which could be costing you money, especially if it's something like paid social or paid search, which had a conversion rate a lot lower than everything else. It can say, hold on a second, what's going on here? If you've got an agency, for example, working for you, you can again go and ask, why is our conversion rate so low versus everything else? Maybe it's just the tracking. Maybe the tracking's broken, but at least it enables you to kind of diagnose problems and then go off and then get them fixed. So there's all sorts of other things that we can just have a look at on the dashboard. So we've got different channels, but obviously within events, we will set up different campaigns as well. So that whether those campaigns are on social or on email or whatever paid, so we can start tracking very specific campaigns too. So, for example, this one would have been derived, I presume, from a UTM campaign, and then we can on a more granular level, let's say, look at one email campaign versus another, one social campaign versus another, and look at conversion rates. And the great thing about this, it's very easy to see. You can scroll up and down and look at all of the different campaigns you have. Very, very easy to scan through and then start to look at one set of results versus another. The idea is that this doesn't diagnose all of the problems, this dashboard, but what it does do is enable you to kind of identify those opportunities and problems, as I mentioned before. So if you look here and see that one conversion rate is much higher than another, and you wouldn't expect that, you can then start asking questions. Was there an issue with the the delivery rate, for example, on this email, or whatever. Other things that we can do and set up here is we can then start to look at all of the different pages. So at this stage, these are just all pages, so you can start to look at those and see if there are any particular ones in which drove conversions. You'd obviously expect reg forms to do that. And we can also, and what we've done also with many other clients, is to then segment these down to types of pages. So for example, you could do speakers, you could do exhibitors, and then you have a nice little report there that potentially could highlight the amount of traffic going to exhibitor pages. You could do forms, you could do blogs, you could do news, whatever type you like. You can start to break down into these types of content. And it's just makes looking at data and looking at what's working or looking at what is not working a lot easier. So for example, in this case, we were specifically looking at these shop pages and seeing which ones are working best. And in this case, it was new stuff seems to that's working a lot better than in terms of sessions, but conversion rate is a little bit lower than, for example, men's apparel. So UTM codes can be extremely helpful for setting up campaigns, and these will be brought in the campaign session a bit further up, but further down, UTM parameters are, you can just look at the specific ones that are down here. You can also see if UTM codes are not working, because they won't appear. So that in many ways, that's often the greatest benefit of this. If this is blank, you can see that your UTM codes aren't working, and they need to be looked at and fixed. So you can quite quickly see that.
John, we've got a very quick question on UTM codes.
Go for it.
If you don't mind answering it now.
Yeah, please do.
To save time, and if you don't need the social ones so granular, can you use the same UTM code on all social posts?
So it depends what you mean all social posts, actually. I think if they are posts within a closely related series that you could call them a campaign, I think fine. If you have very distinct subjects which you're covering, let's say one is about a certain topic, or you're targeting a certain audience, and then another set of posts are targeting a different topic or another audience, I would definitely split those out. But let's say you had a series of posts which are basically about a similar thing and targeting similar people. Yes, we always have to be mindful over time that otherwise it gets too granular. I do certainly get that. And maybe, yes, I combine those together. So hopefully that makes sense. There's no right or wrong, to be honest, when it comes to, oh, there is wrong, obviously, but in terms of UTMs, I think it's just thinking about it logically. I did actually, if you check out our webinars page, we did a previous session on UTMs and have a look at that. But it's certainly worth putting them all down onto a spreadsheet. So you can therefore see how you kind of break down which UTM codes to use for which campaigns, and also try and name them in a standard way so you don't get lost, because it's very easy if you do loads of UTM codes to kind of get confused as to which one means what. So a nice spreadsheet listing all those down is often the way to do that. But certainly, yes, if you have similar posts, I'd probably put them under the same campaign. So in many ways, so I've gone through Google Analytics, and on this dashboard here, I have covered what I consider the primary metrics to have a look at. There are obviously lots more that you can look at in GA4, but these are the ones that I consider probably to be the primary ones. And I think for a lot of the events organisers, certainly the ones that who I speak to, let's start here first, because if you can get a really good understanding of these and your conversions and get all of this set up, this is a fantastic place to start. There are obviously loads more that you can go into actually within Google Analytics itself and see certain behaviors on certain pages and funnels and journeys that people take and all sorts of amazing things. But I would say step one is get really good at this stuff first. Make sure you have all of this really basic data going and making sure you're getting proper insights, not only at the report at the end, but especially whilst the campaign is going on. So you can see if there are any problems, if there's something wrong with paid search, if a particular email didn't seem to go out properly, and have a look at this during the campaign, so you can just make them as effective as possible. So I'd certainly suggest making sure you know your numbers, you know where the reports are in Google Analytics, and before all the campaign starts. So then in the hustle and bustle when all things are going on, when you go in, you can manage them quite easily, or you can get a dashboard from us. Okay, in addition to Google Analytics, we also have a service called, oh, not we, there is a, Google also have a service called Google Search Console. I'm amazed actually how many organizers don't have this set up. There are lots of people, it seems to be a bit of a hidden secret. So if I just quickly show you Google Search Console. So this is what it looks like. I'm not going to go through all of the different features in here today, but the main things really that people should have a look at would be obviously the number of clicks, and this is only from Google search. Still relevant, still drives about 95% of search related queries and traffic in the UK and around the world so far. Obviously AI search is eating into that, but Google still has a massive monopoly at the moment. So right at this moment in time, this is a fantastic place to get real insights as to how your website is working in search and what you can do to improve it. So total number of clicks, hopefully that's fairly obvious. So if someone does a search online, finds your site in Google, clicks on it, that's a click. Impression, that's kind of, it's more of an indication of visibility. So this is when people have done a search online, you know, when you flick through the all of the different results where you've seen results, but you haven't actually clicked on them. So an impression is when someone will see your result, but today hasn't actually clicked on it. So it's useful to know because the more you start to do work on your website to get it seen more via search engine optimization, the first thing you'll see improve is impressions, and then that's followed by clicks. Just as an aside, which you'll see illustrated quite well here, is that Google in the last month has actually changed the way in which it measures impressions. So basically nowadays it's going to stop measuring bots, i.e. AI engines crawling around and various other things which go around the internet, and just measure people. So as a result, there are many websites, including this one, in which you'll see a big drop recently in impressions, but that's actually more due to the way that Google has changed their reporting rather than what actually has changed, actually the number of real people seeing your website. So a bit of an aside. But just if you're looking, if you sign into Google Search Console today, tomorrow, and see a big recent drop in impressions, but the clicks are remaining steady, that's probably the reason why. Also tells you things such as average position. So if you do a search in Google, you might see your result, you might see your website in position 1, someone else on mobile might see it in position 3, or someone in India might see it in position 10. And what this does is give you a nice average of that position depending on where you are, the mobile device, the device you're using, as well as your search history as well, because that can make a difference. But this gives an average position, which is useful to know. And also it gives the actual words that people are typing into Google to actually find your website. And that's really insightful. So for example, if all you find here is your brand name, it means that that's all that people know, you know, when they about your site, rather than for a site in which drives more organic search. Well, typically people, you know, may put in a topic in your event. So let's say an AI event or a machine learning event. If your website's starting to appear for those, that's an indication of, you know, some SEO has been done on the website and it's starting to perform a little bit better for other searches than just your brand. If it's just your brand, you'll probably find you'll have a nice amount of traffic, which is going up and up and up until the event. Event happens, and then you have a big drop off afterwards because people are obviously just searching for the event. Whereas you generally find if you have non-branded searches, around the topic, then your traffic throughout the year can be a bit more consistent and higher off season. And that's what it's this kind of insights that Google Search Console can give. So if we go onto our dashboard, so that first one was Google Analytics. If we go onto Google Search Console, again, we just have a nice summary of all of the clicks, the pages, different keywords that drive people to the website, which country is driving people, and the device at the bottom. To be frank, it's relatively simple, and that's the point. That hopefully you don't have to be a data scientist to work out how to use it. And we can also compare. So, for example, we can compare the last 28 days versus this time last year. This is done quite a lot, obviously within events, especially if you're annual event. We can then look at have stats improved, have things gone up, have things gone down. So as we can see here, clicks have gone up a bit, so that's looking good. So as mentioned, there are some core metrics. Clicks is the really obvious one. Actually, people clicking through from Google through to your website. Impressions gives an idea as to the overall visibility of your site. And if you are doing some SEO or you are publishing content, you'd hope to see impressions increase first, and then clicks increase and follow soon after. So it's a bit of a precursor to actually getting more traffic to your website. Click-through rate. So this was this one. This is the percentage of people who see a result versus actually click on it. So if you've written the title and the description down there really well, then people are more likely to click on it. If it's something that seems relevant to them, then that can indicate then more people are likely to click. So that's just useful to know. It's the wrong one. An average position. So that's, again, it's useful to know. Sometimes one thing we often find is that maybe the boss or the owner of the business will kind of do a search online, see that they're not in the position they thought they were, but that's because it could depend on where they were located, the device in which they were using, their internet history. Average position is a much more accurate and a much more relevant kind of figure to use because it's when everyone who comes to your website. So like this says, Google Analytics shows what users do on your site, and Google Search Console shows how people found your site. Like I said before, Search Console can highlight, for example, if people are just using brand queries to find your website. And if I'm honest, from my time in events, this is overwhelmingly the trend, that it's the brand name that drives the vast majority of search, because from my experience, very few events actually do optimize their websites, and so therefore it's overwhelmingly brand. And that's where in many cases they kind of are missing a little bit of an opportunity, because what if someone doesn't know about your brand and they are looking for an AI conference or they're looking for a sustainability trade show? Will you be showing up for those sorts of events? For those sorts of searches? In many cases, the answer will be no, because the website hasn't been optimized for that. And that's certainly missed opportunity to drive people to the site, get potential attendees, exhibitors, sign-ups to the newsletter. So again, in Google Search Console, we have we have clicks, we have page performance. So again, we can see pages in which are driving people to this, and which Google likes and are attracting clicks. Now, this is quite interesting because if you're thinking about optimizing your website, one of the best ways to do this, let's say, you find that these pages are doing really well and you want to get more people. It's often better to kind of optimize a page which is kind of doing okay at the moment rather than, for example, starting a brand new page. So let's say you had a page which was doing okay for, and let's say an AI conference had a page that was doing okay for AI related kind of search terms. It'd be better to work on that if you want to optimize for AI conference than starting from scratch. So looking at the page performance is also really useful, as well as looking the actual queries which you have down here. By country also indicates whether you could do some, let's say, for example, we have lots of people from, so we have people, 2% of people from France, let's say that was higher. We can also get that kind of information from Google Analytics as well. But what that might indicate is whether or not you decide, do I start to think about making my site multi-language? So if you're already having a decent number of people from a certain region speaking a certain language, going multi-language, and it starts to raise those sorts of questions. Again, by device, this is 50-50. Nowadays, mobile, Google does look at your website mobile first, even if the majority of your visitors are desktop. This actually kind of defines actually how many people within search, what device they're using. But what this reminds you is, okay, what does the website actually look like on the major device on which people find the sites? So let's say this is 80% mobile. You think, well, okay, I really need to put all of my effort when it comes to design of the website and how it reads on mobile. So I'd say first step from that would be fire the website up on your mobile, have a look, and start to make comments and think, how can that be improved? So again, the stats here, they may seem relatively simple and relatively obvious, but it's now starting to think, okay, what do these stats tell us, and what can we do? So here we have 10% of people from the United States. So do we need to start catering for travel arrangements? Do we need to start thinking about highlighting, certain American speakers, that type of thing? It just starts to highlight certain things you could further do to enhance the website. Again, the idea here is that it's top level. We don't go deep dive into all of these, but let's start just having a look at the data and what it's showing us, and what questions can we start asking, and how can we start to make our website better as a result of knowing this information. So in many ways, that was quite a quick run through, and it was quick because actually, when it comes down to it, there's, in my view, it's only those key metrics really initially that you need to start looking at. Like I say, there's lots of others you can look at too, but I'll definitely start there and really start thinking about those. Look at fewer metrics and think about those metrics more. That would be my advice. I think you can't talk about analytics without thinking about accuracy. So I'm just going to very briefly touch on this because we've had some clients recently who have had a bit of a challenge around both websites being slow and the accuracy of the data going into Google Analytics, and the result of that, as we found from looking at a few websites, actually was from these things called tags. Now, tags are simply bits of code from Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, various other sort of marketing channels, which is installed on the website and sends data back to Google Analytics or whichever platform. Now, if you have multiple tags installed, so we've had examples where we've had Google Analytics installed 2 or 3 times. We've had the old version of Google Analytics on there. We have Google Analytics installed on the website, and within Google Tag Manager. We have Google AdWords tags installed 2, 3, 4 times. We've had Google Tag Manager tags installed twice on one occasion. If all of this happens, you can cause major problems when it comes to your data and your accuracy and the speed of your website. Multiple tags will slow down your website, and actually sometimes quite a lot. And also potentially it can totally break the tracking. So we have had cases where and one time it massively overestimated the organic search. We were thinking on a particular website that the organic search had doubled since last year. In actual fact, that wasn't the case at all. It was due to, as I say, multiple tags being installed and then causing the data to get polluted. We've had other cases where it's actually massively reduced the amount of data being collected. So basically, the point here is just saying that the tags you have installed on the website can be a major issue and it's quite simple really. You just need to have one of each. So we need to have ideally Google Tag Manager is just installed in the head of the website, and then within Google Tag Manager you have Google Analytics once, you have Google Ads once, and then all of the other tags that you may have from LinkedIn or all the other different marketing and sort of analytics platforms you might be using, but ideally as few as possible and only one of each. And as I say, it is a problem because you may have different agencies working on, or people come and go from a marketing team, but it's certainly worth. And the way you can find out, especially on Google Tags, there's a free extension in Chrome called Google Tag Assistant. Google Tag Assistant, if you install that, you can then see what tags are installed, or at least what Google tags are installed on your website. But a little bit of homework, just go and have a look, just make sure you haven't got too many tags installed, and because that might be causing problems with your data. I have also spoken in the past about cookie consent. Cookies, increasing privacy laws, GDPR, are restricting cookies that can be collected and information that be collected by Google and the other advertising platforms. So I'm just at this stage raising that if they're not necessarily installed properly, it could be causing fewer analytics to be collected that should be. We've actually starting to do closer work with Cookiebot, and who are a cookie banner provider, and we're going to be doing a webinar with them. So I'm not going to be covering cookies in this one. So I think as much as anything, just to raise that if you have issues with your analytics, it is worth probably having a look at your cookie banner and have a look at the kind of the decline rate. Sometimes I have seen cases where 90% of cookies are declined within the looking into the analytics of the cookie banner. You just log into that platform. So we'll be addressing this with Cookiebot, and we'll let you know when this is and when we'll be doing the webinar on this. So stay tuned. So kind of drawing this to a bit of a conclusion, we've done the dashboard simply because we were speaking to so many clients who were having issues with Google Analytics, not being able to find the data, finding it too complicated. So created a dashboard, put it into the back end within Showoff to make that easy to see. We've also added in Google Search Console. People didn't have trouble using it. Often people just didn't even know it existed. So we've added that in as well. So if that's of interest, drop us a line. But hopefully, at least, even if that's not of interest, the different metrics that we're looking at, have a look at those. And those are the key things you really need to be looking for within Google Analytics and Google Search Console. So we've actually I've done a couple of a guide for this, and this will be made available for you to after the webinar. So just a quick guide, just reminding you of some of the things in which we've spoken about here. So clicks, impressions. So I've got all of this as a handy little handout for you. So that was, which one was that? That was, and here's Google Analytics. So all of these stats got a nice little reference stroke PDF for you, so you can have a have a look at that. And I'd say with analytics, the main thing is to start looking at it. And the more you look at it, the more you think about the data and what it's telling you, the more it will start to make sense and paint a picture as to actual kind of nuts and bolts things that you can do on the website. Well, that's pretty much covered it. So have we got any questions at all?
No additional ones. Just one thing to clarify, John. If someone has moved their website from one platform to another, will the data still pull through if we were doing a dashboard for them?
Fantastic question. So long as we just need to make sure that everything's been collected beforehand and that's all working, and then we just get the code that was installed within, whether it's Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics code, and we just install it on the new website, and then it should all flow seamlessly. Obviously, a key part of when you move over to a new platform, everything should always just be double checked, make sure there's no issues, make sure that the encode has been installed properly. But we regularly launch new websites on a daily basis, and all the data just flows through seamlessly. Sometimes where there are hiccups and where it gets more complicated is when there's a third-party registration form, because then you need to have Google Tag Manager installed on your website on the registration form, and it can get more complicated. And that's it's normally on the registration form where clients tell us about the difficulties, but on the actual website itself, so long as whether it's directly Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager is moved over from the old site to the new site, everything should just work seamlessly. Anything else, Katie?
No, that's it.
Fantastic. If you have any questions on this, let me know. We'll be sending through the slides, and there was that guide as well of the key metrics. So we'll be sending that over, and hopefully that's helpful. We're also going to be, sorry, next slide. We're also, I briefly talked about tags and what the issues there are relating to those, especially if multiple tags are installed. But there are also some other very, very powerful things we can do with tags to even if you have the perfect tag set up in terms of no duplication, just the right ones you need. There are still ways in which you can get even more data and more reliable data, and make your website even faster. And it's a service called Google Tag Gateway, and which ASP are going to be helping more and more clients out with. And we're doing a webinar on this on the 18th of November to talk about Google Tag Gateway, which will the benefits are relatively simple, but amazingly powerful. So making your site even faster, feeding even more data into Google Analytics, into Google AdWords, so which can directly increase your return on investment. So if you want a faster website and you want a better ROI for your paid campaigns, come to our Google Tag Gateway webinar on the 18th of November. So thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for listening. Any questions, please drop us a line, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.